Before I do some closing remarks, well, I'm not closing yet. I'll be back up here later. Wait for me. Does anybody have their passport that they didn't turn in? Okay, very good. So, wow, what a great day. We had some really great breakout sessions, and whether you attended the open roundtable sessions or any of the other ones around HR, education, AI, e-commerce, reverse logistics, warehouse automation, or real estate, there was something for everyone. Who learned at least one thing you can take back to your office tomorrow to share or to do something in your workplace? Anybody? Okay, good, all right, good. So I now have the honor of introducing our closing keynote speaker, Joseph Hours, Director of AI with Centric Consulting. Please welcome Joseph to the stage.
Thank you for that introduction. Appreciate it. So good afternoon, everybody. How are you?
Good.
Good? Have you enjoyed the conference?
Yes. Yes.
Is your blood sugar?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me in the back, or do I need to talk into the mic? You can hear me? So I can just scream and we're okay, right? Perfect. Your blood sugar starts dropping, there's cookies there to pick it right back up.
There you go.
Right? I know how it goes in the evening. So how many of you here have heard the phrase AI? How many people use AI in your job today? Good number of you folks. Oh, thanks. Got a microphone. I don't know if this is going to help, because I'm just going to be doing like this.
That's okay.
Right? So how many people have heard of this thing called ChatGPT? Almost everybody? Anybody use it? What's some of your favorite ways to use it? We'll start here.
Business plan.
A business plan. Somebody else. Benchmarking. Someone else. Speeches. Like this one here, right? I got a dad joke off of ChatGPT. I don't know if it's a little off color. I don't know if I can tell it, but I'm going to anyways. We're going to risk it here. So I went to the zoo the other day, and they had one puppy there. You might call it a Shih Tzu. I like that one. All right. So we're here today to talk a little bit more about AI, and specifically around sort of what's coming next. But to do that, we're going to cover some of these other topics here because it's important. So one is talking about AI's viral splash. How many people were really familiar with AI prior to ChatGPT coming on the scene? A few folks, far fewer than who know about it now, right? And raise your hand and have experienced it. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some AI capabilities that are beyond ChatGPT. So ChatGPT is not the only form of AI that exists out there. Some of these you may be using and not even aware of. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how AI has been adopted in the supply chain. And I'll be the first person to admit here, I am not a supply chain expert, but I did some research, so hopefully this will resonate with you guys. We'll talk about the impact of AI in the workplace, and then we'll sort of talk about the future of what's coming from an AI perspective and what you guys can look forward to. Sound good? Yes. All right. And if we have time, we'll do questions in here, but I think we have a cutoff at 3 because I'm stopping you guys from drinking. Is that what's happening here? So I am holding up the alcohol. All right. Now I know that the target is on me. Gotcha. So let's do a quick overview about AI, because there's a lot of things about AI that people aren't familiar with. And first of all, AI has been around for a long, long time. And I'm going to show a little timeline on here. This is not the entire timeline of AI. The theories of AI were actually invented way back in 1800s. They manifested through actual computing technology through the late 50s and 60s, but they were never done at a scale that we could take advantage of until recently. So this is a more recent history, and this is more focused on types of technologies that you guys might be familiar with today. So back in 1995, there was this little thing called T9 predictive text that came out. Is anybody familiar with that phrase? Great, few of you are. For those of you who aren't, T9 predictive text is simply when you have like a flip phone, right? And you've got your phone pad on there, you hit the number 2 like 3 times for the letter C to come up. And then you would see like a short list of words like cat come up, and you could scroll up and down and select that. That's actually known as T9 predictive text. It's one of the early forms of AI that you may have been exposed to and not aware of. But there's other forms as well. 2002, Roomba came out with their nifty little vacuum cleaner. Anybody own a Roomba? A couple of you do, right? When are they going to make an industrial Roomba? That's what I want to know, right? that little one that does not pick up enough. But Roomba came out, right? Pathfinding vacuum robot for your house, right? Detects obstacles, navigates around it. That had AI built in it to accomplish that task. Most people weren't aware of that. They just thought, hey, it's just, some fancy bounce some sensors off and, it just does its thing. But it actually had AI built in it as a consumer product. Fast forward a little bit. I doubt anybody knows this, but 2006, Netflix made a pretty significant introduction of AI on a consumer scale, and that's with their recommendation engine. How many people are familiar with Netflix recommendation? Yep, almost everybody, right? You like something, so it's going to give you other things that other people like you have liked, and other things like that thing that you liked have liked, and this is how you say like 10 times in one sentence, right? So they came out with the recommendation engine. The interesting thing about this and why it was important from an AI perspective is this was released to their entire subscriber base at the same time, so it was done at scale, and it does real-time feedback. So if you like a video today or a movie, a TV show, it will give you a new recommendation based on that updated piece of information. So you can change that recommendation engine by going through there and liking a bunch of things that you either don't like or you actually do like, and it'll give you updated recommendations in real time. So it was really done at scale, wasn't confined to banks and fraud detection and back office type stuff. So it was really sort of consumer oriented. This first phase of AI development is the area that I like to call sort of narrow AI, and it's really focused on task-specific productivity. And what I mean by that is it is AI that is accomplishing a single task for a single purpose. So the vacuum cleaner, all it did was navigate, right? AI, that's all it did was navigate and avoid obstacles. Netflix's recommendation engine, all it did was provide recommendations. It did a very, very specific thing. Even T9 predictive text just gave you a word, if you will. And so this is how AI sort of started and got its foothold, at least from a consumer perspective. Fast forward from there, we start seeing in 2011 to 2014, we have Alexa and Siri devices. They now have AI built into it, predominantly voice-to-speech recognition. Speech-to-text recognition, which means you would say something, it would interpret that, and then execute a series of commands to do what you wanted. This could be anything from adding things to a shopping list to sending a text to a classmate or something, right? So you could do that with these devices. We also saw in 2015 Tesla come out with their full self-driving package in their vehicle. Does anybody own a Tesla? Because I was going to ask you if you've actually seen full self-driving yet, and I've not found anybody who has it, right? It doesn't fully exist yet, but it has a combination of AI systems built into its car. And so what we're starting to see now with AI is we're starting to see AI start to do categories of similar related tasks. So in the case of a car, we're now driving, which requires us to identify obstacles, speed limits, lane markers, etc. It's all the same task to accomplish still kind of a singular solution of driving, but it's a complex one. In the case of virtual assistants, Siri and Alexa, it now does a whole series of tasks that are very related. So this is what we call the era of sort of categorical AI. As we fast forward, we start seeing other advancements in the scientific community creep their way into the business world. So has anybody here heard of Google DeepMind? So Google DeepMind is a project that Google created. It is a self-learning AI system. And in fact, by the way, last week they just came out with a video of Google's DeepMind playing Pong on level with a human player. It's pretty interesting if you go and look that up. It's kind of fun. But it's an AI algorithm that they taught to play chess. And when they did so, it became so good at playing chess that it beat the #1 chess grandmaster not only once in the world, right, but several times over. And now they have now gone on to train it to play the game of Go, which I know nothing about other than how to spell it, but it's supposed to be infinitely more complex than chess to accomplish. But Google's DeepMind algorithm can actually do that. And so we're seeing these huge advancements in capability and productivity as we move through time here. 2017, Harvard started using AI to diagnose cancer in patients through radiological scans, and it was outperforming the radiologists in their ability to read this. I think there's probably not a week or a month that goes by that we don't hear about some sort of new medical advancement with AI, where AI is outperforming stuff. But this is important because what we're starting to see is we're starting to see what we call organizational productivity out of AI, which means we're implementing AI at a scale and in places of businesses and business processes where we're seeing increased productivity. But this went all sort of under the radar, right? As we mentioned before, prior to ChatGPT, most of the people in the room hadn't even heard of AI, let alone some of these other things. Even though they may be aware of some of these products, they may not be aware that it had AI built into it. So what happened is we sort of had this viral moment with ChatGPT. And it actually started way back in 2020, which I doubt very many people know about. Google actually created the beginnings of ChatGPT through technology under the covers called generative pre-trained transformer. Nobody cares about that language, but when they released ChatGPT 3.0, it went released with very little fanfare, right? Some people in scientific communities took note. This was interesting. Some people had access to it. The only thing of note at this time was that somebody actually took their deceased wife's diaries and trained ChatGPT 3.0 on those diaries, and they got them to converse with them in the style in which their wife wrote in their diary. Now this, beyond being creepy for many, many people, the company OpenAI who released it was like, no, you can't do that. They banned it, and that made the news. Because it was so effective at doing so, and it was such a unexpected use of AI, that it made the news, at least in technical circles, it made the news. Most people didn't become aware of ChatGPT until the following year of 2023. Usually in March is about when people remember ChatGPT coming out. And that's when we came out with ChatGPT 3.5. And it went viral, right? As I said, everybody in their hand raised the room, they heard of ChatGPT 3.5, right? And a lot of people have already used it, and they're using it in the business setting. It went viral for a couple of reasons here. So one, it was a technology advancement that people weren't expecting. So while we have generative AI coming to scene where we can generate new things, we could generate text, we could generate audio, video, etc., we weren't really expecting it to be as good as it was. And two, they released it to everybody at once, which means if you had an email address and you went to their website, you could sign up and you could get access to ChatGPT. The third thing is once people did that, they realized that for the first time, they could use AI for themselves in a way that they wanted. Prior to this point, you were locked into a vendor product of some sort. You could only use Roomba's AI inside of a Roomba. You couldn't take it out and put it in your Hoover vacuum cleaner, for example. You can't take Tesla Auto Drive out of Tesla and put it into a Honda. You just can't do it. But with ChatGPT, we now have AI that we can use on a personal level. And so this is sort of the era that I like to call, personal productivity, that really builds on top of task-specific productivity. And it went viral. Everybody heard about it. Everybody started using it. So the question is because some of you are using it, the natural question is sort of what's next? And this is the big unknown. With AI today, the capabilities that we have far exceed many people's ability to sort of do that visionary thinking of how can we use AI. So let me do a little thought experiment here to get you an idea of what we might be able to do with AI. And we're going to stick to the generative AI sense for a second. But imagine for a second, all of you have heard of a streaming service, Hulu, Netflix, etc. Most people probably have it. And if you don't, you're at least familiar with the concept, right? If I want to go watch a TV show, I have to go to a streaming service, I have to search for it, I pull it up, and I watch it. That's been great. It's been far better than cable. We can also fast forward through commercials most of the time. We love it, right? Imagine what AI can do to that particular industry. And I'm going to use that industry for a second because there's some news articles that I think most of you will be familiar with. But as we do this, think about how AI could disrupt and transform your industry as well. So in the case of the entertainment industry, the streaming service, imagine instead of going there and searching for a show, you now ask for a show that you want to watch. So because we just had the Paris Olympics and Snoop Dogg featured heavily, I'm going to use him in my example here. Imagine you wanted to watch a spaghetti western set in space starring Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart dealing with issues of ageism and euthanasia, which by the way is a spin-off of a Star Trek episode. I'm a Trek fan, so that's why I did that. And have that be generated on demand. That would be phenomenal. TV series that have been canceled, you could just say, hey, continue this series, add some additional plot lines and storylines, and have that be generated in Creative. What's crazy about that is the capabilities to do that actually exist today. We have the ability to generate text with AI. We have the ability to generate video with AI. We have the ability to generate audio with AI. We have the ability to bring it together and generate AI content generated shows. And that's the stuff that we have today. The only thing that we haven't solved yet is being able to do it instantaneously. It takes roughly 10 minutes of AI power to create 1 minute of finalized video for you to do. So it can't be instantly on demand. But we have the capabilities to actually do this. And this is important, right? So the Hollywood strike, you guys remember that? Actors, writers went on strike first, followed by the actors, because of this AI sort of problem here. Because this is disruptive to their industry. So if you have the ability of going to a web page and asking for something to be created, right? I want to watch, this comedy starring these types of people or these celebrities, and have that be created. So what does that leave for writers, right? What's their job look like now? It's different. What does it look like for actors? Well, it looks different, right? Foley, with people who do the sound for these things, what does their role look like? It's dramatically different. AI has the ability to transform our society on the scale that the Industrial Revolution did to agricultural society. That is the level of transformation that we're looking at, and that's something that is happening right now. It's not something that's coming. It's something that's underway. So as you think about this, think about how might my industry be, disrupted here. And the one thing I want to call out, because this sounds scary, right? Because it sounds like, writers are out of work, actors are out of work, all these other people are out of work. I won't say that that there won't be changes with job needs across broader society. But what I will say is who we need to do certain jobs is definitely going to change. The skills we need, the tools they use is absolutely going to change. If you think about the transformation that happened with agricultural society, it used to be that one farm supported 3 other families in the community way back prior to the Industrial Revolution. Today, one farm supports 297 families. So the number of farmers we need has definitely changed. The skill that they need to do farming has changed. The tools they use to do farming has changed. And the productivity that they have achieved has also changed. We are looking at that type of transformation across all industries with AI in the coming years. And so, I think I'm picking up some noise there. So I want you to think about that, what does this mean for the supply chain, right? How might this impact, our industry? There's all sorts of levels of automation that could take place. There's all sorts of predictive analytics, different things that we could do. But I use this to kind of lead into AI exists out there. You need to embrace it and start thinking about how can we incorporate this into our business? Because I do firmly believe that businesses that fail to incorporate AI are going to really struggle to compete against organizations who actually do that. All right, so enough of the fear mongering. Let's talk about where people are at from your AI journey perspective. And this is just a good spot for folks to take, or a good slide for folks to take a look at and say, hey, where are we at on our AI journey in our organization, right? Are we sort of an experimenter? Are we building? Are we truly, achieving? Or are we innovating in our organization? And so this is just a quick litmus test, right? So if your organization, if you just have some interest and you've identified some use cases, but you haven't implemented anything, you're going to be in this early phase where your organization's AI aware, right? If you move up here, you can read all of these. If you're actually implementing AI and you've got stuff in production, congratulations, you're probably a little ahead of the curve of many other organizations, but you need to continue advancing along that curve here. So this is just a quick sort of journey of your AI maturity. You want to take back and talk to folks about, hey, where are we at? Where do we want to go? Where do we need to be? It will change for every organization. I always like to say that what works for Twitter doesn't work for NASA and vice versa. The same is true as, from an AI perspective. What works in your company and in your industry is not going to be the same that works in banking, or if you've got a company that's 100 times the size of yours, what works for them may not work for you. So the challenges that we're going to have to face are multifaceted here. And this is where leaders really struggle with today. So first, we have a rapid AI expansion. Gartner says that in the next 12 months, we'll have 25,000 new tools and services branded as AI come to market. And that makes it tough because you're like, well, which ones are going to be viable? which ones are gonna last and which ones aren't. I was talking to an insurance company this morning, and they were looking at an AI vendor for a specific product, and that vendor existed last year when I talked to them, and this year that vendor is out of business. So, you know, it's important when you're looking at this, trying to figure out, we've got to look for which ones are going to be good, which ones are going to be here for the long haul. The other thing we have to worry about is governance and ethics around AI. There are things that you can do with AI that even though unintentional, has some very negative consequences. Some of those will have legal consequences for organizations. So leaders struggle with, well, in the current regulatory landscape, what does it mean to manage AI? What does it mean to manage risk? What does it mean to make sure that we're not implementing bias in what we're trying to do? So that's something they struggle with. And then there's a trust versus reliance on AI thing that people are struggling with. How many people have been using ChatGPT for over 6 months? We've got a few. How many people use it at a weekly basis? Almost the same number of people. When you first started out, how carefully did you read its output versus how carefully do you read its output today? Has that changed for anybody? If it has, raise your hand. Same level of scrutiny for most of you? A lot of people start to become reliant on the output that it produces, and they start not to scrutinize that output as much as they should. And so you have to balance this, right? AI is not a 100% system. And so knowing when to trust it, when to question it, and balancing that skepticism versus trust is a huge challenge for leaderships, and it's a huge challenge for the workforce as well. We'll talk about a couple of examples where this has gone off the rails. It's made the news in a couple of slides here. So we also struggle with, well, where can it be used most effectively and most efficiently? There's an ROI play. As I always like to say, AI is not free and it's not cheap. So figuring out where it's going to provide value for your organization relative to its investment is hugely, hugely important. I'm only down to 5 minutes already. Holy moly. We're going to go faster here, so. All right. We're not going to go fast with the laptop. Here we go. So there's a couple things I want to talk about. So real quick, when we talk about AI capabilities, even though most people have heard of ChatGPT, there's really 6 other core AI capabilities that you should be aware of. And some of you may be aware of them and may not realize that they're AI. So one of them is predictive systems. These are systems that make predictions. So think of when you try and do a credit card transaction and it gets flagged for fraud. That usually is a pattern that an AI system has picked up on that says, hey, this may be fraud. People use predictive systems for everything from the weather to the stock market, fraud detection, etc. It's pretty common. Most people are familiar with it in concept. Robotics, warehousing, you guys have probably seen this, manufacturing, we use lots of robots. This is how we use AI to interact with our physical world. Natural language processing is a big mouthful phrase to basically say, you know, the world of language, how do we communicate? This doesn't necessarily mean speech, but it does mean, you know, language and communication. So when we think about that, it's everything from computer programs as a type of language, law is a legal type of language, English, Chinese, those are all languages, is how we communicate with one another, using AI to understand and communicate with that. Computer vision is how we understand the world through computers. It's not just what we can see, but it's also the light ranges that we can't see, both ultraviolet and infrared. So we see this a lot in manufacturing for quality control checks. We see it for preventative maintenance, etc. We also see a similar thing around audio, same type of thing, but it's with sound, both what we can hear and not hear. And then finally, but last but not least, we have expert systems. And these are systems that help us make decisions based on a wide-ranging set of recommendations. Recommendation engines are a common output from this, so you provide some inputs, and it's like, hey, I'm seeing these things go on, I think you should do this based on your prior decisions that you've made. Those are known as expert systems. And so what I've done here is I pulled up this model of the supply chain, and now it's because I'm trying to run fast, I forget which organization produces this. But in each element of the supply chain, there are opportunities for leveraging different types of AI within each element of this. And so this is just on the demand fulfillment side. You can see those examples here on the left. And again, I am running a little fast here. Supply side, right? We have a different set of things that we could do in each of these spaces. On the planning side, we can do this. On the return side, we also have some as well. So lots of opportunity for using AI within the entire industry. So hopefully you guys will take away from this, hey, there may be some great ideas for us to use, to explore within our organization on this. So here's what we're hearing from the market, and I think this is good for you guys to know. So first, most organizations are concerned about governance, and rightfully so. Secondly, organizations are concerned about skills. Does my organization have the right skills to implement and manage AI solutions within our organization? So that's another thing that we hear. ROI, there's definitely had here. I'm going to do a couple of slides here talking about some of the ROI that AI is going to achieve for the supply chain. So I'm going to advance to those because those are probably more interesting to you guys. Whoops, I went too fast. So here is some of the supplies, and this comes from several sources, from Forbes, MarketWatch, Oracle, IBM, Gartner, Industry Week. This is a compilation of statistics of where AI is showing benefit within the supply chain industry. So everything from improving forecast accuracy by 30%. I worked with a food supply company in Kentucky, and just by improving their forecast by 2%, it netted a 1% improvement on their bottom line. So these gains are very, very real for organizations. Even small gains have meaningful impact, but you can generally improve your forecast accuracy by 30%, reduce your lost sales by 65%. There's lots of ways of doing this. Efficiency improvements, reduction in overall cost, reduction in transportation costs, excess inventory, etc. Lots of different things that you can use AI for that can meaningfully move the needle for your business's strategic objectives. Even in workforce productivity for your back office staff, there's productivity gains to be had. Lots of stuff, lots of statistics here that you can see. What I want to call out is a way to think of this. So we often hear about like ChatGPT can improve worker productivity. The question is how and by how much? Well, the question of how is pretty simple, right? Simply by using it to do things that we do in a repetitive nature or helping us to get started. There's an adage out there, it's easier to edit than it is to create. So if you have to write a business plan, it's easier to edit an existing business plan than it is to create one from scratch. It's part of the reason that people copy and paste stuff from Google all the time. Even in school, students do the same thing. I don't know how to get this essay started, so I'm going to start with something someone else did. AI can help you do that. But it doesn't mean that you're always going to see a huge, 15 to 40% gain in productivity. And the question is well, why is that? When you dig into the data, what you find is we introduced this phenomenon called what I call the +2 thing, which is AI can give you the equivalent of 2 years of experience in areas and skills that you don't currently have. So if you're just starting out in a field, getting 2 years of experience is a huge productivity bump. But if you've been in this field for 20 years and doing this skill for 20 years, adding another 2 years of experience is only a small productivity bump. And so that's a way of thinking of it, and that's why you see this graduated scale productivity based on what skill you currently start with when you start using some of these AI tools. But definitely productivity gains to be had. A cautionary tale is only if you are trained and your workforce is trained. People familiar with Rite Aid, the discount drugstore? So they implemented facial recognition technology, trying to be like Las Vegas and casinos, where they take face scans of people throughout their store, and they were doing this from a loss prevention perspective, right? So they're keeping track of people who were known or suspected shoplifters, and they kept a database of that, so that when you went into a different Rite Aid store, you'd be flagged, security would greet you, and escort you out the door. The problem is they didn't train their workforce on how to use this tool, so you ended up having store clerks like making subtle photographs by walking across aisles and taking blurry photographs, sending them to an AI tool, and the AI tool would say, yeah, there's a match here, but the match score is like 0.17. Well, the associates didn't know what that meant. They didn't know if that was a good match or a bad match, but because it was a match, and that person was escorted out of the store. This became such a problem that the federal government had to step in, and in order to avoid criminal prosecution, Rite Aid had to enter into a consent decree where they wouldn't use facial recognition technology for 5 years. So very, very real sort of implication of, hey, if you allow your folks to use AI, you need to make sure they're trained in how to use it appropriately. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Uber. Now, Uber's been doing self-driving cars, they have data scientists, they have people who are trained in AI. They ran into a very significant problem because they weren't doing governance around some elements of their AI project, and that was around training data selection. And what they ended up doing is they ended up training their cars to recognize pedestrians. Well, quickly, just, when you guys think of images of pedestrians, what setting do you typically expect them to be in? Anybody? Crosswalks, absolutely, thank you. Perfect answer. You expect to see in crosswalks. They had so many images of pedestrians in crosswalks that the AI picked up that the crosswalk was the most important factor in determining if someone is a pedestrian or not. And so they had a car on a road and it killed a pedestrian in an unmarked crosswalk. Even though they had experience with AI, they didn't have governance around all elements of AI and allowed this issue to happen. So you have to make sure your workforce is trained. You got to make sure you have the right governance in place to use, AI properly. But if you do, there are real meaningful gains for you to have inside of your organization. And so I think we're probably at time, so I'm going to advance here. Real quick, to get started on your journey, this is how we recommend to our clients that you get started. So one, figure out if you're ready to use AI in your organization. Do you have training? Do you have any governance in place? What leadership are you going to have? Who's going to champion this? How are you going to fund this, right? Start thinking about those questions. And then you need to make sure that you're aligning AI with your strategy. Just implementing AI for the sake of AI is expensive. You can do it, but it can be very, very expensive for you. Then you need to establish AI governance to avoid the things like we talked about with Rite Aid and Uber, right? What are our policies and procedures? Even if we're just going to use ChatGPT or we're going to use Microsoft Copilot, should we be putting our company financial data into these systems for analysis or not? What should be allowed, what should not be allowed, right? You need to iron that out through governance. Then you need to identify, well, where can we use AI? Where are we going to get those gains from and that ROI from? Then you can prioritize those, and then you can start rolling those capabilities out across your organization. So this is the easiest, most structured way in order for your organization to get started with AI. And because we're at time, I got more stuff I can talk about AI all night long, but I do want to be mindful of your time and the fact that I know everyone's looking forward to getting a drink here. So thank you for your time, thank you for inviting me, and hopefully you guys got something out of this.
So we have time for about 2 questions from the audience, if anyone has any.
Will we receive these slides?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
See, boy, you're really keeping them. You filled our brains.
I know.
Yeah, filled our brains too much.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Your time.
He could go on talking, I could go on listening. So thank you very much, Joseph, for coming and giving this presentation. So to wrap up today, we want to thank you all for joining us and supporting the CRLC and this collaborative event with other acronym associations that make up supply chain evolution. Just to give you a heads up, next year's date has already been set, and it is on Thursday, October 9th, 2025. Please get out your calendars and put it in there. Nobody's moving. All right, I'll keep going. Thanks to our presenting sponsors, Franklin County Board of Commissioners, Schneider Downs, and USI. To our impact sponsors, FC Bank and FST Logistics. To our signature sponsor, Ignite Industrial Professionals. Thank you to our sponsors, Crimson Cup, or venue sponsors, Crimson Cup Coffee and Tea and Ohio Dominican University, and to all our investor partners. I also have a few other thank yous to all our vendors that made up the visiting between breakout sessions and at lunch, an interesting adventure to learn something new. Thank you to our Columbus Chamber of Commerce marketing and event, Hope and event staff, Hope and Kaylee, for whom this wouldn't happen at all. And then I want to also mention on your table something that the Chamber is sponsoring with American Nitro is Wing Fest.
Go the other way. Go the other way. There you go.
Whew, okay, the Wing and Music Fest that is on September 14th. It's a OSU bye week, so you can go out and enjoy some wings if you want to have a team, if you want to do the wing bobbing contest or eating contest. If you want to come buy a beer, some of the chamber staff will be at the beer tent. So come visit us there. And then please join us for other upcoming chamber programs. Visit columbus.org/events to learn more. And now our vendor passport drawing. Jenny, Virginia, you won.
Wow.
Congratulations, yeah. Congratulations, yeah. So we'll get your information, hope we'll get your information for December's mixer. And now, reminder of our networking and continued networking at Embassy Suites by Hilton Columbus Airport, just down the road, sponsored by GBS Corp. They are going to be there. They have some goodies, and we have some tickets for drinks. So if you want to take some cookies home, as Joseph mentioned, there are some up here. Please do that. And thanks. Have a great day, and we'll see you again next time.